Today I want to speak about Henry VIII and the emergence of Anglican Church in the 16th century. Henry VIII was a devout and educated Catholic man. Henry VIII was born on June 28 in 1591, and he was the son of King Henry VII, Tudor of England. He grew up as a devout Catholic, was highly educated in humanistic and theological field, and was interested in the arts and sciences. In a writing against the church reformer Luther in 1521, he advocated the retention of the 7 sacraments of the Church, whereupon the Pope awarded him the title Defensor Fidei. That means in English, defender of the faith. A few years later, however, he separated the Church in England from Rome and the Pope. He had himself appointed to the supreme head of the Church and transformed the Roman Church into an Anglican Church. Since his older brother Arthur died, Henry took the throne of England after his father's death in 1509. He married Catherine of Aragon, Arthur's widow, who gave him a daughter Mary in 1516. But she was unable to bear a viable male heir to the throne. Wars against France and Scotland accompanied the king throughout his life. In 1527, Henry tried to have his marriage with Catherine dissolved by the Pope, as in his opinion it would be incestuous, despite the papal dispensation long since received, as can be read in the book of Moses Leviticus. The marriage was never annulled by the Pope. Henry was appointed head of the English Church by resolution of Parliament and church assemblies, and detached it from the papacy. Okay. The king married Anne Boleyn, expecting an heir to the throne. In 1533, the daughter Elizabeth was born. In 1536, Anna was executed as an adulteress. Catherine died in the same year. Henry married Jane Seymour, who gave birth to the heir to the throne, Edward, but who herself died after giving birth. Okay, the monarch of England passed numerous ecclesiastical laws and ordinances. Canon law and ecclesiastical law have been partially reshaped. Henry's religion continued to based in its basic features on Catholicism, but the head was no longer the Pope, but the ruler of England. His vicar general Thomas Cromwell, who later also had to die, endeavored, together with the newly created Reformation Parliament, to quickly change the corresponding church laws in sense of the ruler. Numerous monasteries were closed and the church property was monetized. A rebellion was bloodily put down. Yeah. In 1540, for political reasons, he married Anna from Cleve, a Protestant princess. The marriage, however, was annulled without execution. The fifth wife, Catherine Howard, suffered death from the axe as an adulteress. Henry's last wife, Katharina Parr, who tended towards Protestantism, survived the king, who died on January 28 in 1547. His successor was the underage son, Edward VI, who was supported by two protectors in government affairs, under which Protestantism continued to advance. Now, some information about the consolidation of the Anglican Church. The contents of belief or the form of worship were initially hardly changed in the Anglican Church. The separation of the Anglican Church in England from the Roman Papal Church was not accompanied by any reform of theological doctrine and of the spiritual life as a whole. On the contrary, the 6 Articles proclaimed in 1539 adhered to the doctrine of Catholic Church in essential points. Okay, they were also called the 6 Bloody Articles because violations of them were bloody, suppressed, and punished with death. However, there have been a number of changes in the Anglican Church. The first English Bible translated from Latin was published in 1535, and a few years later the first English hymn book, which also contained German Reformation hymns. The Anglican Church was also further secured in terms of content. In the so-called 10 Articles in 1536, Holy Scripture was established as the sole basis of faith. The number of sacraments was reduced to 3: baptism, penance, and the sacrament. All other sacraments were rejected because they supposedly could not be derived from the Bible. The consolidation of the Anglican Church was continued after the death of Henry VIII in 1547 by his successors, with different goals and different results. Now, I want to give some information to the successors of Henry VIII and the Anglican Church. After Henry VIII's death, his only son, the only 10 years old, was named Edward VI, officially crowned king. The affairs of state were carried out by the minor's uncle. He wanted to enforce even more Reformation elements in the Anglican Church. To this end, the Common Prayer Book was introduced. With regard to the doctrine of the faith, the Anglican Church is close to the Protestant Church, while the service is more reminiscent of a Mass celebration in the Catholic Church. Now to Maria I. Like her stepsister Elizabeth, Maria was declared illegitimate after Henry's divorce from her mother. so both daughters could not come to the throne. By a parliamentary resolution, however, both were admitted to the throne in 1544. Unlike her half-sister, Maria remained faithful to the Catholic faith, which is why she was also called Maria the Catholic. Soon after her coronation, she embarked on a rigorous policy of recatholicization, and immediately gave up being head of the English Church. So she had her father's church laws repealed by a parliamentary resolution and began a sharp persecution of Protestants. She had almost 300 followers of the Anglican branch executed, which earned her the name Bloody Mary. Her marriage to the King of Spain, Philip II, remained childless. Therefore, after her death, her half-sister Elizabeth succeeded her on the English throne. Yes, then began the rebuilding of the Anglican Church, and Elizabeth I, under Elizabeth I again. After her coronation, Elizabeth I again separated from Rome, revived the Supreme Act, and declared herself head of the Church in England again. As under their father, clergymen and officials had to take the oath of supremacy. With a new law, the Act of Uniformity, the Common Prayer Book was reintroduced. Shortly before death, Elizabeth I appointed the Scottish King Jacob VI to be her successor. From 1603, he ruled over England and Scotland as Jacob I, and was also head of the Anglican Church. Thank you for your attention.